Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Omega Revolution. As you know, the Omega Revolution is radically different from the prescriptive one-size model of health. We are all unique individuals with our own set of goals and aspirations. But how can you achieve these goals without being healthy? The way to get healthy is not always clear. Motivation to change must come from deep within because health happens in day-to-day life, not in the doctor's office. We are on the cutting edge of a health revolution. Chronic diseases, especially those that are preventable through lifestyle changes, are the epidemic of our generation. People desperately need guidance to find their way back to health. And so tonight, I have a special guest, and this special guest is joining us from Melbourne, Australia. Dr. Mick Jordan is an international speaker with over 25 years of experience. He has worked extensively in the field of sports and remedial massage therapy, as well as natural therapy. Mick currently has his own practice in Melbourne, Australia. He also works along Australia's Paralympic team. He is also on the scientific advisory board for Zinzino. So we do ask that you not record or duplicate any portion of this event without Dr. Jordan's permission. He works really hard on his presentations, and we are so blessed to have him and the opportunity to ask him questions and to join us here in Canada and those people that are joining us from other places around the world as well. So please remain muted during the presentation and have your questions ready, and we will check on Facebook as well as on here for any questions that you have for Dr. Jordan. So Dr. Jordan, welcome to the Omega Revolution.
Thanks, Deb. Thanks for inviting me on.
I'm excited to have you here. Was there anything that I missed in my introduction? Because I know you're a moving person. You're always changing, and you always have such valuable information and insight when you join us here.
Yeah, very, very dynamic individual. But I guess that's the same with health too, right? Because things are always changing as far as health's concerned as well. So we need to keep up with those changes as well. So yeah, always learning, always putting into practice what I learned. So yeah, it's always work in progress. We all are.
Absolutely. I am just going to get ready to share my screen here. So just bear with me for half a moment. And here we go, share screen. Okay, so tonight, obviously, we are talking about the Zinzino Balance Oil. And as you know, health-related problems are increasing globally. And it's time to ask why. So why is that, Dr. Jordan?
Well, we're seeing, obviously, if we take out of the equation what's happened over the last couple of years with COVID, then we only need to sort of look at some of the clinical data, and this is a lot of what I'm going to share is from my clinical experience. So what we're often seeing is that the incidence of certain conditions are not only on the rise, but they're also becoming prevalent in younger generations. So what I'm seeing in the clinic is kids that are presenting with chronic diseases. So these would be conditions that you might associate with someone in their 50s, 60s, 70s or beyond. They're now presenting in children. So from my perspective, the question is why are their bodies breaking down at such an increased or at such a higher rate than what they should be as well? And we can sort of cover off some of those things tonight, but there's a very holistic view to it, as far as it's also very important about what they're putting in their bodies, what they're not getting from their diet, those types of things as well as other more lifestyle choices as far as exercise and sleep and stress and those sorts of things as well. So yeah, it's definitely an important part we need to look at and address, and I think address really, really quickly as well, because if we've got a whole bunch of sick kids, they're going to grow into sick adults as well. So we need to address it really early on in life now, rather than in later years.
Right. And I kind of left that as a really, really broad question. So I'm glad you were able to pull that all together there for us, because it is. I mean, there's so many faucets in this, and so many different areas where we can learn and glean. And and it starts back with Hippocrates, like, let your food be your medicine and your medicine be your food. And that's pretty basic concept, right? And and I've talked to other people as well, older generations, and they're like, there really isn't anything on this planet that we should not be able to heal with our foods. It's just we're not utilizing the right foods at the right time or the right quantities, because God, whether you believe in God or not, this earth was created and all things are equal, and what is on this earth should be able to heal us. And I think it's a lot of that is what we've done to our cities and our factories and our foods that is causing a lot of this chronic inflammation that we're seeing. And you see that more so than anybody even in your practice.
Yeah, definitely. And what we've done, like as you said, what we've done to food, like food should be our medicine, but then we're going to look at, well, what have we done to food? What is the quality of the food we're actually putting into our body? And what's our body's ability to break that food down into its micronutrients and phytonutrients and get ourselves to actually absorb the goodness out of that food? And you've only got to look in the supermarket, walk down the aisles and just see all the packaged foods that contain preservatives, additives, colorings, flavorings, poor nutritional content, and that's now become our diet. We've actually got more food than what we've ever had. However, what I see in clinic are malnutritioned or children and adults. So we have more abundance of food, but we're not getting the nutrients that our body needs from that food as well.
No, absolutely. And like you said, it's man-made foods. And you and I had this conversation not too long ago where we were actually you were sharing about that hot dog that was 8 years old that was literally buried, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty insane. And so part of this relates back to the history of omega-3s, right? And omega-6s. So back in the 1800s, omega-6s weren't a big thing in our diets, were they?
No, there was a pretty good balance back then as well. But again, we look at how that diet's shifted. My personal theory is we should be getting smarter with each generation. In other words, if we look back to our parents or our grandparents' diet, and have a look at that and go, okay, what do we know now about food? Like if we move forward 40, 50, 60 years in those generations, we should be smarter as a species about what we put in our mouth. And I would argue it's the opposite. In other words, if we look back and they might have meat and 3 veg or something like that, and the way it was grown and it wasn't sort of mass produced in the way it is now, they're often getting better nutrients in their food. I grew up in just a normal suburb, and we had chooks and we had a whole vegetable patch in our backyard, and that was in the suburbs. I didn't live on a farm or anything like that, and we had fresh produce. Now it's sitting in freezer stores and supermarkets, and a whole lot of things are added to it as well. So if we go back and look at a few generations, as you said, there's probably a really good balance there of omega-6 and 3s in our diet. But as we move forward, we're eating a lot more processed foods, and particularly more omega-6s, which are really inflammatory.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to back up here a minute, Mick. And, so we're talking about this omega-6 to 3 balance. If I'm just new and I'm just listening to us here tonight for the first time, what is it exactly that we're talking about? What is an omega-6 to 3 balance?
Yeah, cool. So the omega-6s, if we think of them in excess, they're quite inflammatory in the body. And if we look at omega-3s, they're your anti-inflammatory fatty acids. So things like nuts, seeds, avocados, fish, those types of things contain those really important omega-3s. And the omega-6 to 3 balance, or omega-6 to 3 ratio, is a ratio between inflammatory and anti-inflammatory fatty acids within your body as well. And we should be aiming for a ratio of 3:1. So if we look at ratios that are higher than 3:1, and we'll probably talk a little bit about these as we go through tonight, but if we look at ratios that are higher than that, that's where a lot of inflammatory conditions will actually originate, and they'll originate at inflammation at a cellular level. And we've got to get our cells right. We forget about if we've got an organ that's not functioning for some reason, let's say it shows up on a GP blood test. We've actually got to go back down and go, okay, that's your liver. Let's say it's your liver not functioning. We've got to look at it and go, okay, your liver's dysfunctional, it's not producing the right enzymes or whatever it might be, but what are your liver cells doing? Because all those cells make up that organ. So this is where that omega-6 to 3 balance is really, really important at a cellular level.
Okay, so from this diagram that we're looking at right now, from approximately the 1850s, our omega-6 to 3 balance was at a 1:1. We know that science recommends a 3:1 or better. The turning point was around the 1960s, which is when we really started to revolutionize and industrialize our foods. And that was a turning point to the 4.1. Now we're looking at a 25:1 as an average American/Canadian, and I think even worldwide, I think that's probably a general average. But this is also the start and the shift that we're seeing now of this chronic inflammation. And this chronic inflammation, it doesn't start overnight, does it?
No, like if, there's the chronic acute inflammation would be, let's say you have an accident or you have a sporting injury or something, you roll an ankle or something, and there's an acute, what we call an acute inflammatory response there. But the chronic inflammation is very insidious. So it happens over a period of time. And, that dysfunctional liver doesn't happen overnight, right? That dysfunctional liver happens because every cell, as you start creating new cells within that liver, you're creating cells in an inflammatory environment. They become dysfunctional, and as a result, the whole organ becomes dysfunctional as well. So it's a very insidious, slow process, but it's definitely prevalent in, as you said, not just in, or pretty much in every sort of westernized country. You'll see these chronic levels of inflammation, in particular that ratio you mentioned, sitting up at 25:1 is quite excessive. And it's no surprise to me when I see that data that can relate to increased incidence of chronic diseases, not just in adults, but children as well.
Mm-hmm. So, to me, if I was to put that in a quick nutshell, I would say that chronic inflammation is equal to unresolved cellular inflammation.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
so before you get arthritis in a joint, there has to be an inflammation at a cellular level. So, if we can get your most fundamental building blocks of your body right, which are your 80 trillion cells within your body, then that's the foundation of healing. That's where healing will actually begin.
mm-hmm. And as we know, these omegas, they affect our entire body. Our cells are obviously throughout our entire body, but it affects our brain function, our hair, our heart, our skin, our inner organs, our joints and our muscles, even our eyes. Like, it literally affects everything. And would you mind explaining to us from this diagram here about the rigidity of our cell membranes? And I'll just let you take it from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So think about, as you said, we're made up of trillions of cells, and
from there,
that could be brain cell, kidney cell, muscle cell. We need to get those cells functioning at the optimal level, and your cells have a use by date, and it's not 50 years, 80 years. It can be weeks and it can be months. Some of your immune cells only last for 3 days. So if you look at red blood cells, they only last for around 4 months. And then your body has to produce a new red blood cell. So that, when you talk about that cell membrane fluidity, like in this particular instance, every one of your cells needs to absorb certain things and needs to excrete certain things. So each cell needs to absorb nutrients from your diet and hydration, and it also needs to get rid of waste products. And the ability to do that is the quality of that cell membrane, which is, if you look at those diagrams, it's like the outer coating that you can see through here. That cellular membrane is made up of EPA, which is a really important omega-3. So if we don't have enough omega-3s in our diet, which we can show via this simple blood test we'll talk about, if we don't have enough omega-3s, every time we go and create a new cell, we don't have the raw materials to put into that cell membrane. So we're actually producing a cell that's slightly dysfunctional. And the opposite happens, right? So if we actually have got plenty of EPA within our body through intake of our omega-3s, we're going to start producing healthier cells. So, you know, if you might have the best diet in the world, and if your cells aren't absorbing those nutrients, then you're not getting the most out of that particular diet. So the ability to absorb it at that cellular level is because of the amount of that omega-3 essential fatty acid in each cell membrane of your cells.
Interesting. And all of, you know, and there too, you know, all of our cells, we're all different from one person to the next. And so this is all part of that. Like, just because we eat the same foods and we live in the same house and we do the same things, we all have the same environmental, you know, elements in our lives, but that doesn't mean that we're absorbing our nutrients and our micronutrients the same way. And, you know, sometimes I think we forget that because we think, oh, well, we're healthy. And, you know, really, when people actually get tested, they're actually really, really surprised at their results because they're in these danger zones. We recently did a trade show in Vancouver. And, you know, we did have, I think, 4 people that were within, you know, under the 3 to 1 or better. And we had probably 10 or 15 out of the 100 that we tested that were, you know, between the 4 and 10. But we also had some as high as 83. So, you know, how do you do that? How do you explain that?
Yeah, it's a bit of a shock when some people do see their own blood tests, and again, why wait till something becomes a problem before we do something about it? So before something shows up on a GP blood test, why don't we address it early on and in a very much a preventative or proactive way? So yeah, a lot of people who think they might be healthy are simply not absorbing a lot of those nutrients, and that chronic inflammation at the cellular level is quite prevalent. So often people get a little bit of a wake-up call when they do see their blood results. But end of the day, if we know that data, we know what your baseline is. Let's say it's 25 to 1 or 40 to 1, you're highly inflamed. We've got the ability to correct it, and we've got the ability to retest that and show you what's actually happening from a pathology, from a cellular level in your body as well. So it is a bit of a wake-up call, but I always say, well, wouldn't you want to know that information now rather than 10, 20, 30 years before it becomes a chronic inflammatory condition?
Mm-hmm. So what about those that are currently taking an omega? And you know, they've been taking them for years, and you know, they're confident in their omegas. Like, how do you talk to those people and say,
and it's a good question, and I would say that most people aren't getting, and I've looked at nearly every omegas that's available fit pretty much worldwide, and they are not being absorbed properly by the body. And we can test for that. We can prove it with a pathology test that what these particular products are not doing. They're claiming to do something, but their blood work and their cellular inflammation is telling us something totally different. So a lot of people are consuming essential fatty acids, maybe in the form of fish oils, but what effect are they having? So more often than not, people who are currently taking essential fatty acids, let's say fish oils, are showing up anywhere from 13 to 1 to 15 to 1 in that omega-6 to 3 ratio. So they're anywhere from 4 to 5 times as inflamed as what they need to be. So their product, the supplement they're taking, is simply not working.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So far, and actually I just have to update this because Zinzino just recently exceeded the 800,000 balance tests worldwide. And, this is cutting edge nutrition. And being able to show somebody with a simple finger prick test what their inflammation levels are in their body. And can you tell us a little bit about the lab where the blood work is sent to?
Yeah, so Vetus is quite a large lab, and as you said, we're up to just over 800,000 tests worldwide, and Zinzino is probably one of their smaller customers, and as in this is a full pathology lab, and they analyze the finger prick tests that we do and send us back the results that we can analyze, and then, as I said, when we do a follow-up test 4 months later, we can actually show people the before and afters with it as well. So it's a really important test, super simple, and you get your results back really, really quickly as well.
Mm-hmm. So in your experience, because you have read a lot of blood tests, and, we literally are showing a world out of balance. And, 97 to 99% of the world are out of balance. What kind of a world are we going to have in another 5 or 10 years?
Yeah, it's a really, really interesting statistic.
I know you can't answer that question.
When we look at those numbers, though, they're absolutely horrific. And again, it's no surprise that people don't present to me with the health concerns that they do in clinic. And it just shows you from that diagram you showed, with where we've come from the 1960s right through. It just shows you the quality of the food that we're putting in our body, and it's showing our body's response to the chemicals that are in those foods and the deficiency in nutrients, particularly omega-3s, that are in most commercial-based foods as well. So that's a statistic we need to change. And I know in Australia here, there are epidemiologists right now that, or have been for the last few years, quite looking at the amount of hospitals we will need to build in Australia to house people. So let's take COVID out of this whole picture. This has happened way before COVID, is that they're looking at the amount of hospitals they need to build, and the delays there will be in services within hospitals as well. And they're pretty horrific. I've seen some of these forecasts of what they need to build. And primarily it's to handle a lot of the kids that are coming through in the next 10, 20 years, as I mentioned, not in a good way health-wise as well. So, there are projections that if you need x-rays, you could be waiting 5 to 6 months to get a basic x-ray done as well, which is not healthcare. And again, from my perspective, and let's look at it as a very proactive, preventative approach. Let's stay out of the hospitals and doctors' offices and things like that, because the only time you end up in one is when you're not well.
Absolutely. And, that brings me to this, you go to the doctor and you take this drug for the rest of your life to treat this illness, but that doesn't treat the cause, and the blueprint remains the same. And the balance remains the same because you haven't changed anything. You're just masking it. And so really that's all that we're doing when we're going to the doctor, because, I truly believe that we can heal our cellular inflammation from within, whether it's with our omega-3s and our polyphenols, but even with our diet. And, even our external things like our stresses and different things that we have, that's all has a bearing on our lives and how we live and our health. So if we can work on those 4 things, we're going to be in such a better place.
Yeah, definitely. And, if we're talking about saying people live longer these days, but what's the quality of that life, particularly in their later years? Are they living in aged care facilities that, and they're living longer, but the quality of life is definitely we need to have a look at as well. And that starts from, any age, whether people, start correcting it when they're 30 or when they're 60, it doesn't matter. You need to start at some point as well. So yeah, look, it's a really important part of our foundation is to go, okay, let's look at that proactive, because it's, people come in and see me and they're on cocktails of pharmaceuticals, and that's not quality of life. and I'm not here to like, I'm all for medicine and everything like that. However, at some level, they're overriding those pharmaceuticals are overriding your body's natural ability to regulate itself at a cellular level. And that's exactly what we're talking about tonight.
Yeah, it was actually interesting. I was listening to a seminar the other day, and they were talking about acid blockers and how they actually, what they're actually doing to the body, and how they're actually ruining the body on so many levels. But that's just what everybody's supposed to take. But then your body isn't creating the proper what is it, Mick, the saliva or whatever or the acids in order to neutralize the food in your stomach, which is all part of your gut health as well. So if we're stopping that part of it, where does it end?
Yeah, exactly. And now it's like in Australia, those sorts of medications used to be prescription only, but now you can actually get them over the counter, much at a lower dose. But the advertisements and stuff on TV now about these sorts of antacids and people with heartburn and reflux and a whole range of sort of digestive issues, that the solution is not to take an antacid. The solution is to look at the root cause of it. You know, that antacid will remove the symptoms, but your body's just going to be responding the same way if it's not corrected.
Mm-hmm. And even from this diagram here, you know, the findings are that only 1% have a ratio of 3:1 or better in North America. Approximately 16% of people take an omega-3 supplement, but even their average balance is 16:1, which is still over 6 times of inflammation in their body. And 83% do not even take an omega supplement. And, you know, even in the time frame that I've been viewing blood tests, you know, I'm seeing people that in their 30s, they're showing at 80 and 90:1. And I know that you've seen some pretty extreme ones as well in young children.
Yeah, I've seen probably the 7 worst blood tests are in kids under the age of 15 that I've read out of thousands of blood tests. So again, it's about the sooner we can correct the imbalance, you know, sooner the younger the age we can correct that imbalance, the more impact we're going to have on that person's longevity, vitality, and their health moving forward into adult years.
So how do we do this? I know that's a trick question. My first thought would be education, because just saying you need an omega, it doesn't really tell somebody why they need it. So tell me why I need an omega, Mick.
As I said, so no, because we know from a pathology test that with all this data now that we've got, and this is one of the world's biggest tests done on essential fatty acids, we know we've got data now that shows the imbalances that are going on as well. And we know, and I've been using essential fatty acids for 25 years. We know the benefit of them to the human body, but we also got to look at, again, you know, as I said, lots of people are taking omegas, but what is the best omega to take, and what's the one that's going to be more bioavailable to the body? So we need that for every cell in our body. So as we turn over those thousands of cells every minute, we need that raw materials in that essential fatty acids to put into our body. And if 97, 98% of people worldwide are deficient, we're not creating healthier cells. So it's fundamental to our life that we have these essential fatty acids to produce healthier cells that aren't subject to that sort of level of inflammation as if we didn't have those omega-3s in our body.
Mm-hmm. So by taking the balance oil, tell me what makes our balance oil, our omega oil, unique.
Yeah, cool. And as said before, from the testing we see, is people who are taking omega-3s, and people who've said they're taking the best omega-3 they know of, I can show you that they're not working to their full or the optimal level. So it's not just about how much of a certain constituent in a supplement. And this goes with a lot of supplements. It's about the bioavailability to your body.
So what does bioavailability mean, Mick?
Yeah, okay. So if you look at, so let's say iron is really, really important to us, right? So I could say, well, would you want to go and eat some nails, or would you want to go and eat some silver beet? Because they both contain iron in different forms. One's elemental, one's an ionic form. But the ability for your body to break it down is going to be much easier in a plant form than it is in a heavy metal form. With the balancol, the bioavailability of it is far superior than anything I've seen. And that's because of not only just the high levels of EPA and DHA in it, they're the essential fatty acids. It also contains vitamin D, super, super important with what's been going on over the last couple of years. Just going back to statistics, 90% of GP blood work that I read here in Australia, 90% of people are vitamin D deficient. Now, that's a really important one for our immune system, mental health, and a whole lot of other chemical reactions in our body. But it also contains polyphenols, and they have a sort of a multifaceted role. So they're a really powerful antioxidant. So they can actually assist your body in reducing things like free radicals, or what we call oxidative damage to our cells. Simple analogy is like rust. Okay, when we expose things to oxygen and sometimes moisture, things like, metal will rust, and it's a similar sort of thing with our cells. So they're very much an antioxidant, a protective mechanism for our cells, but they also help with the absorption of that essential fatty acids through the gut. And that's where I believe we're getting such really, really quick results within a short period of time with this balancol.
Okay, interesting. I was just trying to, sorry about that. I was just trying to check to see if we had any questions coming up there on Facebook. So I mean, polyphenols are becoming almost like a brand name right now. Like they're, you see them, you see them in advertisements, you see them flashed all over the place. And so these are very important to us. And so can you tell us a little bit about the olive oil polyphenols?
Yeah, so the balancol is taken from a particular olive, and again, its role is multifaceted. So it's there to sort of help absorb it, but more important, antioxidants are there to protect our cells against influences, whether it's oxidization, whether it's free radicals in our body. It's also there to protect it. So we're not only just getting the protection of the essential fatty acids, we're also getting the polyphenols to help protect our cells as well. And even going back to looking at the quality of food, like we used to get quite a good intake of polyphenols, like we did omega-3s years and years ago, through our sort of vegetables and some fruits. However, we look at how we grow those, fruit and vegetables now. And again, I'll talk from where I am in a different hemisphere of the world, but it would be pretty similar. But the use of things like superphosphates, and we don't rotate crops, we don't put those nutrients back into the soil. So we're very deficient in those polyphenols in a typical diet. So this is where the balancol is a really synergistic formula. It's not just, hey, it's got some essential fatty acids in it. Those essential fatty acids, vitamin D, polyphenols work synergistically on the body as well. And they also have a premium balancol, which has 4 times the polyphenols. And for me, I want as much protection against cellular damage, oxidative stress as I can. So yeah, the polyphenols are a really important part of it.
Mm-hmm. So this one here, this is the regular balance oil, and it's a 300 milliliter bottle, and it retails here in Canada for $49 plus shipping and GST. And when you look at that and you go to a health food store and you look at the ingredients on a bottle here, and you read it, and it says, take 2 capsules daily for optimum health. And it contains fish gelatin and 5 or 6 other things that you're like, ooh, what are they? Right? So you
Yep.
really are getting what you're paying for. And I know personally, when I hear the word fish gelatin, it's not a good thing. It doesn't envision good things in my brain.
I don't sort of look forward to going, oh, what's for dinner? Oh, we're going to have some fish gelatin tonight. And yeah, it just doesn't sit well with me. And it just shows you about the poor quality of a lot of supplementation out there. And claims that are out there about their particular products. So again, quality, purity, sustainability is a real, they're all really important factors in the choice of a good quality omega-3 as well. But yeah, a lot of them contain things that you really don't want to put into your body as well. And you definitely don't want to be putting in things like heavy metals that are found in most fish oils, even ones in health food stores, supermarkets, pharmacies, contain high levels of heavy metals. And you do not want to be putting those into the body. So purity is absolutely paramount when it comes to essential fatty acids.
Okay, so the balance oil, no matter what, it checks all the boxes. It's keto, it's friend of the sea friendly. It checks all the boxes there. And the other bonus is that it's not mixed with an omega-6 sunflower or that sunflower or safflower oil, which are omega-6s, which we already know we get too many omega-6s in our diet. So why would we want to add something even like Udo's 369? It's still very popular here in Canada. I know from our talks in the past that it's not number one in Australia either.
No, it was popular years ago, but the science now that's come out about these ratios is showing us a different path we need to be taking.
Mm-hmm. So here, this one here, the Balance Oil Premium, this actually contains our extra virgin, revolutionary extra virgin olive oil, which has 30 times the polyphenols in it. A bottle of our olive oil, a 250 milliliter bottle, is around $99 Canadian. But in every bottle of Balance Oil Premium, we actually have half a bottle of the Revo. And so for $77 versus the $49 for the regular balance oil, this is an amazing way to get your fish oil, your polyphenols, and that extra olive oil, that extra boost of that. This is the one that's your preference, isn't it, Dr. Jordan?
Yeah, definitely. Like you said, it's like I want the full protection of the polyphenols, and that's why I use the premium. Yeah, and it's a fairly recent product. Even using the regular balance oil that you showed with the white label, just even the clinical results with that are absolutely exceptional. But then now they've said, okay, how can we improve, the best product? Okay, let's add in more of the polyphenols, which is only a better thing for us.
Mm-hmm. So how do we know if we need it?
Cool. Good question. And it's a really good question, because if we didn't know until we had the test, we knew the benefits and we knew the science and the research behind essential fatty acids, but we really didn't have a way of testing where we were actually at in our individual bodies. We'd normally go to a doctor and get our blood test done, and they look at our vitamin D levels and our liver function, our iron levels, and those sorts of things, and cholesterol. But we never had a way of actually measuring of these really important fatty acids. And the simple blood test that you do at home measures 11 of these fatty acids in your body. So it's a really interesting test. And the youngest I've tested is a 3-year-old. The eldest we've tested is a 93-year-old as well. And they all need it for different parts of their life, because as an adult, as I said, we're turning over those cells, thousands of new cells every minute of the day. So why not create healthier versions of those cells? We go back a step and we look at kids, adolescent kids and so forth, is not only are they replacing those same amount of cells regularly, is that they're creating new cells, right? They're growing. So this is where it's really, really important for growing kids.
Yeah. It's and I've tested some young children as well, and some elderly people, and you can definitely see that. And when you start to see where they're like 96% deficient in EPA or DHA, and that right now they may not be, they might just have a little bit of arthritis in their hands or something, but you can just, knowing what I know now, to me it seems like their cells are just creaking and ready to break and shatter because they're so rigid. And, if we can solve this by just taking a simple supplementation,
Yeah.
Why isn't everybody doing it?
Yeah, I think it's, as you said earlier, it's an educational, there's an educational component to it, because now we've got this information, we've got this data, we've got these statistics on the blood tests, and we can present it, and we can test people in a really simple way. But even more importantly, we're not telling them to go on some crazy diet or go and do huge amounts of exercise. It's a simple supplementation, and then we retest in that 4-month period of time, and we can show them what it's doing to their body.
Yeah, it's a strange thing when we tell people it's so simple, just eat real food, right?
Mm.
And these are some of the health benefits as well, which we'll talk to in a moment. I did have one question from Facebook asking if we can test young children. And so what is your answer on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we need to. As I said, the 7 worst blood tests that I've read worldwide are kids under the age of 15.
And I'm just going off the top of my head. I think it was 158 to 1. Is that close?
185 to 1.
Oh, 185 to 1. Wow.
Instead of 3 to 1.
And how old was that child?
They were a male for age 14.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
And, again, correcting it at that level, is that age is super important. And the question is, what if we don't correct it? What is that going to show up like? What is that person's quality of life going to be like if they've got that inflammation happening at age 14?
Yeah, that's a tough question. So I'm just going to put you on the spot here for a moment. Obviously, sure. this 14-year, I do it all the time.
You do it all the time.
So, obviously, this 14-year-old child has parents. What did their parents say? I'm curious if you're allowed to just.
Yeah, I obviously won't go into it. I can't go into it too deeply, but no. Let's just say that. The parents were in a similar way. So there was a common sort of thread there as far as what their diet was and their intake of essential fatty acids were like in that family. And that's often what we see when we see high levels of obesity. We'll often see it in the kids, but we'll also see it in the parents and maybe even the grandparents. So there is sort of a bit of a flow-on effect, and I'm not talking about genetic. It's more of a lifestyle choices, or often kids don't have a choice about how they're educated when they're younger, right? Like we, as parents, we try and educate kids to eat those healthier foods, and it all depends on how those parents and what their views are on food. And if junk food's prevalent in a household, then that's all a child knows, and they'll reflect that in their blood work.
Mm-hmm. And you know what? I mean, even for myself, Mick, I took an omega supplement. I took my 2 capsules daily for optimum health because that's what the bottle told me, right? Mm-hmm. But I didn't truly understand why I needed it. And, but we know that everybody needs it, whether you're an infant, whether you're an athlete, which we have Zinzino ambassadors worldwide that are professional athletes that utilize these products. And you have athletes that you work with that are on the products. It's not just for athletes, it's for everybody, because everybody, 97% of people are deficient.
Yep. And athletes are just using their body in a different way to the everyday person. And but yeah, we can see that we all need it.
It's pretty amazing that we have this, and like you were saying, it's a simple finger prick test. The test results are analyzed, and they're sent to Vitas Labs in Norway. They're analyzed. It's totally anonymous. And, you're able to see in Canada here, I think it's taking roughly 4 to 8 weeks to get your test results back. Different areas are less time as well, but you're able to see in a very short time how much cellular inflammation you have in your body. And how important is that actually, Mick? If we boil it all down just to that, how important is it to know what our cellular inflammation is?
Yeah, well, as I said, the cells are your foundation. We've got to get those most fundamental building blocks of your body, your cells, function at an optimal level. And part of that um, is how much omega-3s, that EPA, is in those cell membranes. So in other words, we want flexible cells. We don't want rigid cells, as you mentioned before. We want to allow certain things to move and into our cells, like our nutrition and hydration and waste products out of our cells. So the ability to do that depends on the flexibility of that cell membrane, and the flexibility is dependent on how much EPA is there. Think about, if you're turning over all these cells in your body, we want to be feeding out those new cells. We want to give them, like a newborn baby, we want to give them the best chance of life, right?
Mhm.
So we want to do the same with every new cell within your body as well. We want to provide that new cell with the raw ingredients to make sure for its lifespan, might be just 4 months if it's a red blood cell. Let's make those 4 months the best 4 months, because that blood cell is really, really important to the rest of your body. Same with the liver cell, kidney cell, brain cell. They're all really important, have a role to play within your body. And all those little roles make up your systems, and that makes up you. So again, we're working at that fundamental level.
Yeah. And, and I've listened to you many times, and, you do talk about this chronic inflammation and how, younger and younger people are getting sicker and sicker at younger and younger ages. And, this is because of this chronic inflammation in our bodies and the need for these vital nutrients. And if we don't get them, where are we going to be?
Yeah, absolutely. We're not going to be in a good way.
No,
we
we're
look at
not.
the long-term effects of those sorts of imbalances in our body as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you, Dr. Jordan. Just maybe quickly, like, what are the top questions that you have people come back and ask? Like, is it about the taste? I know I've had a couple people, I'll ask you about this one. I've had a couple people that they have a little bit of burp back. What would your recommendation there be?
Yeah, they can look at, like, dosage is based on body weight, which is really, really important. So you're taking it once a day. You mentioned flavor. Everything is naturally flavored. It's more citrus-based flavors, but it's really palatable, particularly for kids as well. Compliance is really, really high because it tastes absolutely fantastic. You won't taste any sort of fishy taste or any aftertaste or things like that as well. It's really unusual that someone would get that sort of burping or things like that. There also may be something else going on with their digestive, as you said. A lot of people are taking antacids and a whole range of things, and that can also affect their digestive function. But if there's something inflammatory wise in their stomach, the balanced oil can actually help it long term by down regulating that inflammation in the stomach as well. So compliance with it is extremely high because of the taste, and you're getting, based on your body weight, you're getting exactly the amount of those omega-3s, the vitamin D and the polyphenols that you need for your body size, which is really important.
Mm-hmm. So would you, and I think I've heard you mention this, so if you are getting maybe an upset tummy or something, would you then recommend taking that with your heaviest meal of the day?
Yeah, because it's an essential fat. Usually your dinner is a more fattier meal of the day. So I would just get people to move it to taking it with their evening meal as well. Sometimes people have sensitivities first thing in the morning when they wake to the stomach. Again, we're very much individuals. So as a rule of thumb, I say to people, just take it at night with your dinner.
Right. Yeah. Well, me, I just take it by the bottle whenever I walk through the kitchen.
Yep.
One of my favorite ways and I'm going to ask you this too when next, but one of my favorite ways is to actually make a salad dressing with it. And I'll put some Revo olive oil with it. I'll put some garlic, some ginger, a little bit of balsamic, a little bit of salt and pepper, and my orange lemon mint, a little dash of lime in there. Man, is that good. What's your favorite way of taking your balance oil?
I'm straight up. Some people mix it, like in smoothies, or they might put in like a shot glass, and it's sort of, because it's an oil, it sits on the water, and then they take it and the water sort of washes it down. But no, I just take it neat, straight on the spoon. once a day. I love it. I love the flavors. I've tried every flavor as well.
I think the only flavor that isn't really popular here in Canada is the vanilla, but I can tell you that the dogs here love it.
Yeah.
Just really quick, and I know you're not a dog doctor.
No, don't have a dog either. So.
What do you think about dogs taking omegas?
Definitely, yeah, it's really important for lots of animals to take omegas. And it's not just, sometimes we used to advertise dog food and we'll give your dog a shiny coat. It goes far beyond what the dog looks like on the outside. It's working internally as well. Yeah, the vanilla, as I said, they're all naturally sweetened. So do you have vanilla slices over there in Canada?
Vanilla slices?
Yeah, they're like, it's like a dessert thing. It's really sweet and it's really sickly. And people, when they think of vanilla, they think of these vanilla slices. So they think it's going to taste like one of these, but it's made from vanilla bean, right? So it can have a little bit of a pungent sort of taste to it as well because they're all naturally flavored. So yeah, sometimes when people look at vanilla, they go, oh, this is going to be absolutely delicious. But it's made from vanilla bean. So the taste is a little bit different to what they might be used to.
Okay, well, you know what? I can't wait to come visit you in Australia and try some of these treats other than Vegemite. I'm not sure I'm actually going to try that yet.
I love it. You gotta, yeah, that's compulsory.
Yeah, I know. You did send us some, and I haven't cracked it open yet. But I did see something the other day where it actually called for a dash of Vegemite, so I might crack it open and give it a try. Anything else that you can add that I might have missed on this, Mick? And I know that this is such a huge topic and we always talk about different areas and that, but is there anything in closing that you would like to add?
Just exploring or just talking a little bit about, I've talked a lot about cells and the EPA component, but the other really important essential fatty acid that's in the balance oil is DHA. And think of that as being concentrated in brain and nervous system tissue as well. So I've used it extensively in mental health conditions, anxiety, depression, bipolar, autism. But, if we think about anything to do with the nervous system, in pain management, those types of things as well. So, the DHA, think about it's concentrated in brain. So things like memory, focus, cognitive function, that's all really thrives on that DHA. So again, we are working on every cell as we spoke about, but I just wanted to mention that DHA component is working on our brain, which is really important because our brain controls pretty much the rest of the body. So we've also got to get our cells right, but we've also got to get our brains right as well.
So isn't this part, I'm going to carry on here for a second then. Isn't this part of the problem too? Because everywhere you go in the grocery stores, you see low fat this, low fat that. But we need a certain amount of good fats because we need to feed our brain. Our brain is what, 65% fat? Something like that. We need to feed it. But if we're depriving ourselves by limiting our fat intake, and then we're not taking the necessary nutrients and supplements and our DHA, EPA, omega-3s, et cetera, that we need, we're really literally starving our bodies on so many different levels.
Yeah, and this sort of originated from the 80s because we looked at fats and went, all fats are bad. And then we went into, we actually looked at, okay, well, there are certain fats that are really important. So anything with the word essential in front of it means we cannot manufacture it in the body. So that's why essential fatty acids, we have to get them in externally from our body. But we need to look and differentiate between good fats and bad fats as well. So when someone looks at a pack and it says, again, I don't know about the labeling in Canada, but in Australia, we've forced companies into, we should force companies that manufacture products to basically break down sugar, protein, salt, those sorts of things in there as well. And it'll have the fat content of a food. And then underneath it, the next line in Australia anyway, has saturated fat. So if there's 10 grams of fat in a product, people go, well, what is it? Is it good fat? Is it hydrogenated fats? Is it saturated fats? So we actually by law have to list, okay, if that product has 10 grams of fat and 8 of them are saturated fat, that's not a good product. So people became sugar phobic and they became fat phobic as well, as far as what was in products. But again, it's an educational thing about, okay, what are the really important fats and what are the ones that are detrimental to our health, like high omega-6s, hydrogenated oils that we found in margarines and all that sort of stuff. But we got to say, okay, well, we need to also limit those, but we also need to increase the essential fatty acids, the omega-3 essential fatty acids, and that's where the balance all comes in place.
Yeah. It's amazing that we've allowed our foods to become so industrialized and commercialized, and that what is there? I think it's you probably know the answer to this. Isn't there like 10 or 15 companies that literally control all of the manufacturing companies in the world for our food products?
I once saw like an infographic on it and what companies own all the other companies and stuff, and they just buy them out, like and then either market their product or put whatever they want into that product. And then so there are certain larger food sources that basically control predominantly what you see down the aisles of your supermarket. And we always have a bit of a rule of thumb that's saying you just shop from the outside of your supermarket. And because walk down the aisles and just actually see and look and say, how many of these products are actually going to allow my cells to thrive and work at their optimal level? And there's not a lot. It could be soft drinks, it could be biscuit aisle, but if you go around the outside, you might have lean cuts of meat, lots of fruit and vegetables, those sorts of things that you have control to some extent about the meal that you produce, rather than a packaged meal that you might buy. Like the worst case scenario would be like a mac and cheese or something like that. Not a lot of goodness in that.
I actually had this conversation with somebody last night, and they used to really love macaroni and cheese, and I used to laugh because I can make macaroni and cheese from scratch, but trying to make it craft dinner, forget it. I can't make it. It just repulses me. It always has. And
I've never tried it, never will.
Well, there's nothing real in it. You might as well eat the cardboard box.
Cardboard box, full of addictive components and ones that are detrimental to your health.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again, Dr. Jordan, for your time. I greatly appreciate it, and I know everybody else does as well. We do have, like I said, we have some people watching and asking questions. And so feel free to reach out to myself or to Dr. Jordan or to anybody in the Omega Revolution if you have any questions, if you would like to order, if you just want to reach out and have a one-on-one consult. We're more than happy to do that. And just know that we are all bio-individual, and that everything starts on a cellular level inside our body and what we're putting into our bodies. And we're all different, and not one thing will work the same for everybody. And that's all we've got for tonight. So have a fabulous evening. And it's just starting to be mixed day down under in Melbourne. So have a fabulous day. And thanks again, Dr. Jordan, for joining us.
You're welcome. Thanks,
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.